Good morning, North Shore families, and welcome. My name is Rick Farrell, and I'm the Director of Student Services. I thank you for joining us today for NAMI's Ending the Silence presentation. Some of you may already know that this Saturday coincides with another symbolic day. Every year on October 10th, World Mental Health Day is observed nationwide or worldwide to raise awareness on mental health issues across the globe. As we take mental health of our entire community serious in North Shore, we definitely want to raise awareness. Next, I would like to introduce you to one of our biggest supporters, Dr. Michelle Reed, and she will share a few words with you.
Thank you, Rick, Director Farrell. It is a pleasure to be here and just so grateful for one of our serious community partners, NAMI, and just all the work, the good work they do. I want to acknowledge that at this time, during this pandemic, that mental health is a concern that has really even been elevated. We realized that not being able to be physically close with friends and colleagues has been a bit of a challenge for people. And so I believe this October event couldn't be more timely. So just want to thank all of you who took time on this Saturday morning to join us, and the recognition that mental health is a critical component of our whole child and whole staff and whole community. So appreciate your attendance and attention to this very important topic, and know that together we can really make inroads and support one another on this very important topic. I also want to thank Evergreen Health Hospital Foundation, as they have partnered with us to provide mental health professionals for each of our high schools. And it's that type of community teamwork and support that will help keep all of us more healthy mentally. So Rick, thank you to you and the team, and so appreciate NAMI being here this morning. So I'm waiting to hear what we have to say and be in dialogue with our community. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Reed. Before we continue with NAMI's Ending the Silence presentation, I want to take a few minutes to discuss ways that the North Shore School District has collaborated with other agencies to support Goal 2 of the district's strategic action plan as we support the social emotional well-being of our students. As mentioned by Dr. Reed, at the high school level, through our partnership with Evergreen Health, we've increased the number of hours that our mental health therapists spend on each campus. So we now have full-time mental health therapists at each high school. At the middle school level, through our partnership with King County's Best Start for Kids program, also known as SBIRT, we currently provide mental health therapists for all of our middle schools in King County. And if you are a middle school parent and would like to have your students screened, in the chat pod, we will provide a link so you can learn more about the SBIRT program and review the screening tool questions. And despite a budget reduction for school counselors in the state of Washington, we were still able to assign school counselors to each of our elementary schools. So if you are in need of additional assistance for social emotional support for your students, please do not hesitate to contact your school counselor. With that being said, I would like to introduce Michelle Meeker and Sharon Babu from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, who will be our presenters today.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Meeker. I'm the executive director here at NAMI Eastside. We serve all of the east side of King County, from Shoreline, wrapping around to Renton, out to the mountains. And we're gonna get started today with a presentation. So I'm gonna share my screen, just a moment. So this is the Ending the Silence for Families. The Ending the Silence for Families presentation is one of 3 presentations. We have also Ending the Silence for Students, and then we also have Ending the Silence for staff, for school staff. So thank you today for joining us. Thank you to the North Shore School District for having us. So I just want to give you a quick overview of our presentation today. We're going to be talking about the warning signs of mental health conditions. We're also going to be talking about how to reach out and respond to your child. Then we'll talk about the school staff, working with school staff and all the resources you have. And then finally providing resources and support. So what we're talking about today is the warning signs. So I'm just a question to you. Have you found yourself worrying about behavior? Is it just a phase, or is it something you should really be concerned about? That's often a question we get. How many of you are overwhelmed by your child's behavior? That's when it can be a really frustrating time. And when you're frustrated and having to work with teachers and schools to address the concerns of your child's behavior, those are when we want to really work to get extra resources. I also just want to take a moment to say that we at NAMI are based on peer-led programming. We're not professionals, and that's actually a real asset to our programming. So we're not going to be focused on diagnosis today. We're going to be talking about symptoms and how to communicate and acknowledge the warning signs and look for resources. So when your youth feel well, it's often easier for them to do well. It's positive reinforcement, really adds to them succeeding in school and being thriving, having good positive relationships. The opposite is true. When children feel frustrated by thoughts and emotions and behaviors, they can feel some shame and then start to spiral in a downward motion and react in a negative way. And then the school work suffers and it becomes really hard to pull back out. So just want to talk about that. Mental health conditions affect all aspects of a young person's life, from their ability to complete school work to their relationships with friends and family. So mental health conditions are incredibly prevalent. 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience mental health conditions each year. And we know that that's going up with COVID now. Alarming is that children often don't receive treatment. 50% of children don't receive treatment. And with the resources that North Shore has with Evergreen Health and Best Starts for Kids, we really want to encourage you to reach out. So today when we talk about mental health conditions, these are some of the examples of what we mean. So the examples, anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, ADHD, ADD, bipolar, those are mental health conditions. And many of these we start to hear more and more in the news. Those are, which is a good thing. We want to take away the stigma of mental health conditions and start to be able to talk about these as we would talk about cancer or diabetes, any other physical ailment. Mental health conditions are physical ailments. It's with your brain, there are chemicals that help us communicate effectively. And there's also coping strategies for us to help communicate effectively when we're not getting good communication happening. So today we'll be talking about 4 steps to early intervention. First is to know the warning signs. The second will be to reach out to your staff and respond to your child. The second is to work with the school staff and your child. And the fourth is we want to provide resources and support. So, and we really want to emphasize that the earlier the better. Many of the behaviors that we remark are typical teenage behaviors. The withdrawing, isolation into their rooms, or spending more time on social media, or being anxious or sullen and depressed. Those can be typical teenage behavior, but it's when we experience them longer, a longer intensity, longer duration, a more intense manifestation, or just a level of distress. And when these exceed a period of 2 weeks, that's when we really want to take it seriously. Just a quick note, depression can be a really physical ailment. I've heard from our peers how much it can affect their lives in that they just really feel like they can't get out of bed. They feel like cement. It's even just difficult to get out of bed to take a shower by noon. And that's a huge accomplishment. So that's just to give you an idea of how debilitating depression can be, for example. Anxiety is another most popular ailment. Anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin. Anxiety is often about the future. Depression is often about the past. So first, trying to push those two back and focus on the here and now is really important. So again, anxiety is, we all experience some type of anxiety, but again, it's when it's intense, when the duration is long and we're not able to function in our professional world or our school world. Let's see. So what you may see, so at school, children will miss class. They might stay in bed and not be able to attend their Zoom classes. They might also be focused on perfection or responding very emotionally to their classes. They might be experiencing extreme levels of frustration and then act out in a violent way. At home, and that's part and parcel now, they may seem sad and hopeless. I'd really point to that word hope. When we see a lack of hope and a lack of future and a lack of excitement towards that future, that's a really, really dangerous time. When we lose hope, that's a critical time for suicide. We'll be talking a little bit about that. I also want to talk about warning signs for younger children. So, and I'm going to go ahead and read some of these because I want to not make sure we don't miss any of them. So when your young child never slows down, is demanding or unable to focus, that's a warning sign. When nothing pleases them, when they're difficult to manage at home, that's a warning sign. If they have severe separation anxiety, they don't want to go to school, or they have unwarranted worrying, or are they severely shy. If they're excessively worried or have high anxiety, if they're fighting to go to bed, sleeping patterns are really important. If they have excessive nonstop energy or impulsive, that's also warning sign. If they have a low tolerance to frustration, making it difficult to participate in family activities, or have disruptive sleep cycles, nightmares, or night terrors. They can be irritable or aggressive and have temper tantrums, have abrupt mood changes, or have physical body pains. So just keep an eye on eating habits, increased hunger, and lack of appetite. So eating, sleeping, and exercise are really 3 areas to keep in mind. Healthy physical activity is going to also affect your mind. Make sure that you have healthy brain activity. Skip over that. So very quickly on suicide in youth. Suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death in Washington State in America. And that's just an amazing number to me, and makes me definitely want to act and react. My family's also been touched by suicide. I've had 3 family members. Most pertinent to me, most close to me was my cousin, David, who died by suicide. And our family didn't know. There are signs for suicide, and we have been able to actually help my other cousin, Rachel, from not dying by suicide. We really come together to support her. And I want you to know that we can prevent suicide by keeping an eye on these warning signs and getting help. So, I want you all to think too, just keep in mind that suicide is an escape of an incredible pain. It's a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And if we have suicide, we had lots of suicide last year in the East Side, different school districts. It's not anyone's fault. There's nothing we could have done about it. And I really make sure that we say that to children so that they can grieve and feel loss for that person, but not be stymied by just a sense of not being able to have done something for it. It's not our fault. So some common warning signs for suicide are talking and writing about death, having no reason to live, again, being a burden, and a loss of interest about things that people care about. And again, I'd point to hope. When people lose hope, when they have a sense of hopelessness, that's a very, very dangerous time. If people lose hope, make sure that you tell them that you're keeping that hope for them, that you love them, you care for them, and you're there for them. And I've heard so many times that that makes such a huge difference. So reach out and respond. So when we're talking about suicide and with our youth programs, we coach children, we coach young adults to ask directly the question, are you thinking about suicide? And it's an odd question to ask. It feels unnatural because we have so much taboo around the subject. So I'm going to say it now. And if you're in a place where you can say it without in private, then go ahead and practice that too. Are you thinking of suicide? It does definitely sound strange to hear that coming out of your mouth. The next question is, do you have a plan? And we ask that question so that we can determine if this is an immediate threat, if we need to call 911, if we need to do something about it quickly. At the end, we'll have resources. Crisis Connections is an incredible resource. Again, your school counselors, Rick will talk about those partnership with Evergreen Health. Those are immediate resources you could reach out to, but definitely ask the question directly. We don't want to step around it, and work to support that person. I did that. I asked my cousin, Rachel, are you thinking of suicide? And I was shocked when she said yes. I was not ready for it, but then I got myself together and said, okay, come on over, or I'll come over there. And we wrapped around her, and we've really supported her over this last couple of years. It's not something that you can fix overnight. It's an ongoing long-term support for that person. So talk with your child, talk with school staff, talk with healthcare professionals, and definitely respond. We want to respond in a caring way. Many of us are older generation and we don't talk about it and we try to push it down, but listening empathetically, listening to validate the emotion that your child is feeling, listening with empathy, and then agreeing with them, finding areas of agreement so that you can partner with them and support them and empower them is really important. So start the conversation, and that's what it's really about. So driving your car, your kid in the car, that's a great time for conversation. And let's think about some ideas about ways to start the question that is not just yes and no. I'd like to hear more about how you're feeling. That's a good way to start. Sometimes you need to talk about your feelings. I'm here to listen. What would you like to talk about? And allowing for that period of silence so that they have an opportunity to fill that void. And then our next slide is a video. I love this video. I'm excited for you to see it.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to pull up I've lost my gallery view. There we go, start video. Okay, so we'll continue on with the presentation, and then we have our youth presenter, Sharon Babu, will be speaking and sharing her story, and I really want to leave time for her. So as we go through our slides. So next is important to speak with school staff, and I'm going to really let Rick talk about those resources that you have with, again, Evergreen Health and the Best Starts for Kids. But when to do that anytime. I really encourage you to, even if you have a small concern, to initiate that dialogue in case you need it for a later date. Have just a short conversation with your teacher, child's teacher, or with counselors that can be directed. So examples of appropriate support. So if your child, their friend or family member comes to you as a trusted adult It's important for them to feel heard, but you can't promise confidentiality. If a friend or family member is important, it's important that you communicate with any conversations with a child's family. If you feel that they may be thinking of suicide, stay with them until you can find help. Contact their family and work with them on getting help immediately. And then finally, it's possible that they may feel more comfortable sharing with you as a trusted adult, but you must set boundaries and the child's family must be involved. So know what your school can offer and work with your child's doctor to address concerns. So working with your child's staff. Young people act. Let's take some time to reflect on these questions. Shared concerns with teachers only to hear there's no problem at school. Have you had family members blame your child's behavior on the way you parent? We have a lot of parents who deal with guilt, and it's not a question about guilt. This is a physical ailment, and it's not anyone's fault. Have you ever been in denial about behavior that your child has had, whether it's a mental health warning sign or something that's just been the norm, or become protective when your child's been sick? That's another situation. Has your child been treated unfairly or simply been defeated by a situation? These are common emotional responses from anyone who deals with a stressful event, and getting mental health diagnosis can be stressful for young people and their family. Things like being in denial or becoming overly protective of your child in certain situations, becoming angry with family members and your child's school are understandable and can be typical emotional responses. So partnering with school staff. Alone, we can do so little, but together we can do so much. So young people often act differently at home than in school, and it's essential to coordinate with school staff to make sure you have all the information you need to help your child. And again, encourage open communication, share strategies that are helpful, and offer information. So resilience and well-being. So teach your child how to make friends. Maintain a routine. It's the same bedtime and the same wake-up time are really essential to getting started. Having meal times together, and then help them see that the good things in life and help them really focus on the positive. When we can do that, we're really reversing that negative spiral. And so Rick Farrell, are you going to go ahead and talk about the resources here? I'm going to stop the share screen, and then we're going to hear in 2 minutes from Sharon Babu, our student speaker.
Well, I'm just going to talk briefly about our supports that we have in the district. I've put information in one of the Q&As that we have information on our website for the recommended mental health providers in the district. In our high school, in our middle school, we have mental health therapists at each school. And we're working currently with YMCA Accelerator to provide mental health support. And I've mentioned that we have school counselors assigned to each school. So if you have any questions or concern regarding the mental well-being of your student, please refer them to your school counselor and they'll get you in touch with the appropriate mental health provider.
And then let's hear now from Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Rick.
Hi, my name is Sharon Babu. I'm 24. I'm originally from the Bay Area, and I currently work at Microsoft as a software engineer. And I volunteer with NAMI for presentations like these, usually for ones for students. So today I'm just going to share my personal story about my journey with mental health. So for me, from sometime pretty early on in life, in middle school, I knew that there's something that seemed a little bit different for me from my friends and from people around me. I felt like I was sad all the time. I had a good amount of friends, but I still felt lonely. I wasn't able to focus. My performance in school was falling behind. I couldn't sleep. I had a lot of headaches, and I just didn't feel good about myself or anything around me, really. Um, I was always pretty quiet, so my friends and my family couldn't really see that I was hurting, and I felt like I couldn't talk about my feelings with anyone, including my family. There are like a lot of reasons for this, but a couple of the big ones was like the environment that I was in and the culture my family comes from as well. My primary environment, like most students, is school, and I was in a very highly competitive academic environment in the Silicon Valley where school was very important, grades were important, and everyone around me was really smart, and I just felt really inferior all the time. Felt like I had to shove down whatever was wrong with me in order to compete. And that just made me feel worse about myself and like I didn't have time to think about anything else. The other component was that my parents grew up in India and I was born in the Bay Area, but there is not really any talk of mental health or mental illness in my family. I had an older brother who definitely had his own struggles as well, and the focus was mostly on him, and I didn't really feel like I was getting much attention from my parents or I could talk about them. And this was really like about like their culture and all the stigma they believed about mental health. I think in high school was when I really started struggling, and it was becoming more apparent to my parents and like some of my friends. And I once told my mom that I thought I was depressed, and she got really angry with me and told me that I wasn't and to not say that again. And I later learned that because in India, someone close to her had schizophrenia, but the doctors in India at the time called him depressed. So for her, she looked at me and she looked at her family member and she was like, they're obviously not the same. She can't be depressed. And she was just really scared. For me, though, I didn't know any of this at the time. And it just like reinforced that I couldn't talk to my family and that I was alone. My parents are also very religious. So one of their big solutions was to pray more, have more faith. And that just made me feel guilty for the ways that I was feeling and felt like I shouldn't feel this way and reinforced that something was wrong with me. So I just felt really lost and isolated in most communities that I was in, including school, family, and church. After feeling hopeless and stuck for a few years in a lot of different areas of my life, I tried to kill myself when I was 15 and a sophomore in high school. I was hospitalized and officially diagnosed with major depressive disorder and a generalized anxiety disorder, partially due to the panic attacks I had started experiencing as well. My parents hated the diagnosis and the fact that I was forced to be on medication, and they tried to fight it for some time. For me, I was pretty ambivalent about everything that was going on at the time, so I didn't really care. The next several months, I was in and out of hospitals, not really doing much at school. If I was in school much of the time, I was going to different therapists and psychiatrists that didn't seem to help. They were changing my medication a lot for reasons that weren't clear to me, and nothing really seemed to help. I was also still struggling with suicidal ideation, other unhealthy coping mechanisms, and trying to hide all this from most of my friends. My high school was also not very equipped for dealing with individuals with serious mental health challenges, and they made it difficult for me in some ways as well. Since I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents at the time, I would talk to one or two trusted mentors or teachers associated with the school, and they were very understanding and supportive and took the right actions necessary when they felt they needed to be mandated reporters, but the school counselors were unhappy that I did this and put an end to it. This made me feel even more lost and hurt and angry. And in my mind, I was just doing what they had told me when I was younger in health classes. If you feel like you can't talk to your parents, talk to a trusted adult or teacher. And I felt like I had done that, but I got in trouble. For me, I finally ended up getting the help I really needed by going away to a residential treatment center for 7 months. Me leaving was hard for everyone involved. My parents had struggled with the decision a lot. And by the time they decided I needed to go, I'd kind of given up on everything and didn't really want to go. I was pretty angry with my parents, but looking back on it, I know that that was the best thing they'd done for me. And it was really hard for them to do that because of their cultural values and their desire to keep our family together. There are a few different aspects of treatment that really shaped my recovery. At the time, having a rigid structure was annoying, but helpful, especially since when I was back at home, getting out of bed, going to school, like Michelle said, sometimes like showering and working out was really hard to do. And at the end of my time at home, I wasn't really doing a lot of those things. I was also like, I had a lot of sick days at school because I had headaches or I just didn't really want to go. So having that consistency really helped me. I was also given a psychiatrist who was finally able to stabilize my medication, which has been really important for me ever since. I met a therapist who I was able to make a strong connection with, and she helped me face a lot of negative and incorrect thoughts about myself, my relationship with my family, and helped me out with tools to face my depression and anxiety. A lot of these tools were from cognitive and dialectical behavioral therapies, and for me, cognitive behavioral therapy was very helpful. I think several months into my stay at this treatment center, I kind of realized that I didn't feel like I was drowning or stuck. And it was a shock for me since I kind of felt that way for years and I was used to it in a lot of ways. But it was really exciting experience for me in a lot because I finally felt some hope that I didn't have to always feel the way that I had felt before. I eventually went back to my original high school and I graduated from there. And that was a difficult journey, but one that I'm glad I did. Some of the administrators and counselors didn't really think I could graduate at the original time I was scheduled for, and that made me feel unsure about myself as well, but I did, and I was able to, with the support of my family and really close friends, finish up my time there and go to college in Southern California eventually. I still fall into depressive phases like I did in college and they're still hard to get out of, but for me, the big difference now is that I know that I will get out of them eventually and they won't last the years that it did before. And I'm able to use tools such as writing, forcing myself to spend time with my friends, fiance, to exercise, to help me along with that process. I think I've also had to accept that after so many years, I still need to remain very vigilant and take the right steps for me in order to maintain my health. In college, I wasn't in formal therapy for the most part, other than managing my meds with a psychiatrist. And I didn't really think I would go back to formal therapy, to be honest. And when I finished college and moved up here, though, I started experiencing a lot of panic attacks again and feelings of like anxiety and worthlessness that I hadn't felt in a long time. And this was due to the new job I was in, the new position. I didn't think I was equipped for it. I had a lot of anxiety about my performance. I wanted to quit at times and I didn't really know what to do. So I eventually accepted that it was time to find a new therapist and talk to my psychiatrist about possibly different medications again. These things were really hard for me to accept. And I'm still in formal therapy again after 2 years of living up here. But since taking these steps, I know that they were the right ones for me at the time. Through everything, the one thing that there's been a lot of things important, like I mentioned, like medication and exercise, trying not to isolate myself. But the really big one is a strong support network. I have a lot of good friends who I trust and I know I can talk to even when we're living in different cities. I have mentors that encouraged and supported me for a lot of years and still do. I recently got engaged. I have my fiance, my parents, and I have a much better relationship than we used to. And these relationships have all been really important, especially as I've moved around a lot in the last 9 years for college and treatment and this new job. And even my relationship with my family, it's improved to the point where they're some of the people encouraging me to go to therapy when I need to and to not feel bad when I have to take my medication. And that's really big for my parents and the culture they grew up in and for me, even though our relationship is still strained at times, it shows that all of us have come a really long way in like our understanding of mental health and mental illness and how we can deal with that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for listening. And I think we'll go back to either Rick or Michelle.
Hello, yes, thank you, Sharon. I think Sharon's story is just really incredible, and all of our youth presenters who speak. It's just amazing for us to be able to hear firsthand. And again, that's the strength of our NAMI programs, is it's people sharing their own lived experiences. I wanted to share some of our other NAMI resources, so I'm going to share our website really quick, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So share screen. I'm not getting the. Here we go. Thank you. So our website is namieastside.org. So nami-eastside.org. We have education, support, advocacy. Our mission, education, knowledge is power. We have seminars, classes, forums, and presentations. Today, this is a presentation from Ending the Silence. Again, we have this for families, for teachers, for students. I wanted to point to classes. We have classes coming up. Our Family to Family is our most popular. It's an 8-week course to help families who are coping with mental health conditions. That's the Family to Family. We have peer-to-peer wellness recovery. This one, NAMI Basics on Demand, you can do from home, and it's hosted on the NAMI national website. So you can do that from home. It's for parents of school-aged children. So it's a very powerful class. And then I just also want to point really quick to our NAMI seminars. The shorter version of Family to Family is our Family and Friends seminar. We also host Mental Health First Aid. They're actually coaching this one today. So those are some of the resources on our website. And then finally, I want to point to our online support groups. So our family support groups, if you feel like you just need to talk more, every Monday we have Zoom family support groups that meet 7 to 8:30. And those are all listed here every Monday, and then often on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We also partner with IAWW, so for the Indian community, that is a particular one on the first and third Wednesdays. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. And I think that Natalie is going to help us, and Rick will help us motor through those questions that you put in the chat.
Yes, at this time, we've spent a little time answering the questions and answers that we've had thus far, but if you have any additional questions, you can type them in the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, and then we can answer those questions or allow NAMI to answer those questions live.
So there's a question here, and it says to North Shore about list of therapists. I'll just say from NAMI Eastside, we do get this question often. We're not allowed to offer specific recommendations to therapists, but there is a resource. Psychologytoday.com is an excellent online resource. There you can match your insurance provider, your geographical location, whatever symptoms or diagnosis, if it's eating disorders or schizoaffective disorder or bipolar, you can match that. You can match ethnicity and age, and really get a better match for either yourself or your loved one. So psychologytoday.com is that resource.
And I did provide a link in the Q&A regarding that question. So we do have a list of providers on our district website. If you would like to have a referral for a student in the district. We'll wait a couple minutes to see if any other questions come in. And Michelle, I do have one question that came in, and I'll ask the question. If you recognize depression in your child very clearly, should you reach out to the school first or directly seek a provider?
So first, just acknowledging that this is going to be a long-term situation, that it's not going to be able to be fixed overnight. So building resources for yourself and your child are important. So I would reach out if you have a very good mental, or your primary care physician is going to be your first resource. So make sure you speak with your primary care physician and then work with them, and then work with the school district and find that provider, someone that your child is going to embrace too. And it might take a few different tries. They might not like the first one or two or three providers and not click, but it's so important and so much help when they do find the right fit. So I would go ahead and start that as early as your child is willing to do that. Acceptance is going to be the first step to getting a better future. There's acceptance, then treatment, and then recovery. So treatment's going to include therapeutic treatment, talk therapy. There's all different kinds of talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing. There are lots of different talk therapies. There's also lots of different medications. And those might take a long time to figure out a good fit. And then finally, the natural supports. So educating yourself as a parent. You're also modeling really good behavior when you get educated, when you take classes and learn more, and when you seek support for yourself, when you attend family support groups and focus on some self-care. The more you take care of yourself, the stronger your support you'll be for your child. So remember that, put your face mask on first when we're in the airplane. That's what you're doing too. You need to make sure that you're strong and healthy so that you can support your family members.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we have, what if you see something wrong with your child, but they just won't talk about it?
Yeah, listening is the key to being supportive. Being there, loving them, saying I love you, saying I'm proud of you is what they want to hear. They need to hear that as a growing human being. Listening empathetically to validate their emotion. Often we listen to have a response. We listen to be able to provide resources right away. But this is a time when you need to just to step back and listen and hear the frustration or the anger or the lack of hope, and sit with them like that video and just feel it and say, I hear you. You can use some of these communication strategies, reflective listening. So just repeating back to them what you hear them say really helps them to feel validated that you are listening. And then again, once you're listening, you can effectively provide that empathy, agree with them, find some areas of agreement, and now you're partnering with them as they become adults and part of taking control of their own physical and mental health. Thank you, Rick. Keep going.
Child, if over 14, have to sign paperwork for parents that have medical information?
Yes, in Washington State, the age of consent for medical care is 13. There are very good reasons for this, but it's also becomes very difficult. So your child has agency over their own body, and you'll need to have a signed release for you to be able to partner with them in their care. So again, doing this early, if they're before the age of 14 is important, but having them see you as an ally, as a partner in their care is really important.
And having already looked for help for our child, we have run into a problem with the lack of therapists that can take additional patients. Any advice on how to successfully find a therapist?
Absolutely. This is a really common question. there is a nationally deficit on mental health providers at all levels, from psychiatrists to psychologists to counselors to social work. So use the resources that North Shore School District has available to you. We're very lucky. We're very lucky in King County to have these additional resources. I would say reach out to them.
Okay, and I'll go to this one. How do you reassure your child that it's okay to share their thoughts, feelings with you when the child says, I don't want to worry you? You seem really stressed and I don't want to add to your worries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful. Child is empathetic and astute in causing you pain. So just reassuring them that you want the best for them. And again, using that reflective listening to just state their worry. I hear that you're worried about worrying me. And I really appreciate that. And I am worried about you, but let's find a way to deal with this together. And working to empower your child is really, really important.
And this is, you may be able to answer this one. This is primarily for like a therapist. What is the difference between cognitive CBT and DBT therapies?
Yeah, that's going to be more for a therapist to answer. The dialectical behavioral therapy is initiated in Washington State here at the University of Washington. CBTs are more broadly known, but cognitive behavioral therapy, I can just say real briefly that how you think, how you feel, and how you act are all interlinked. So when we're feeling anxious about something, taking a step back and saying, what's causing me to feel this way is that you're thinking. And then your thinking and your feeling are affecting about how you behave, how you act, and how you react to situations, which is a vicious circle. How you act, sometimes you go, oh no, I can't believe I did that. Now you have some shame around how you reacted, and it sends you into that feeling mode. So trying to get a handle on that, think, feel, and act, and take a step back and really look at how your feeling is affecting how you're thinking and behaving.
Let's see. What if your child who is 12 and on meds when he was 10 and now refuses to take them? I feel that they were helping. However, my husband does not want him on meds. Now he won't take any when he clearly needs something. He struggles with anger overload and anxiety and on the spectrum for social and emotional.
Yeah, that's a deep intertwined connection. I would just point out that medication is difficult. How many of us have been on medication, antibiotics, and we start to feel better? So we say, oh, I don't need to take this anymore. And then we leave the 5 or 6 extra pills on our antibiotics. We know we need to take them all the way to the end. Or if you've been on a medication that makes you feel nauseous or constipated or flat, you can imagine that it's not much fun to be taking that medication. So just bear in mind that your loved one is having to take a medication that may not make them feel better. And then they become frustrated or resentful that I'm taking this medication for you so that you can feel better about talking to me. But it makes me feel worse. So having a good dose of empathy about your child or loved one needing to take these medications, and finding a way to partner again with them on how you can best support them to do that. And then empowering them to say, okay, what are the side effects that are unsupportable, that are not something that you want to handle? And looking for solutions, but saying in the meantime, let's give this a good shot. Let's give this a good try. We need to be patient because these medications take a long time to take effect.
And that looks like it ends the Q&A portion.
Okay.
So definitely thank you. I would like
Yeah.
to thank our superintendent, Dr. Reed, for joining us today and our speakers from NAMI. And before we go, I just want us all to remember that we must continue to work together to combat mental illness. It is prevalent in our schools, communities, and even our families. But together through our continued conversations, I think that we can definitely reduce the stigma of mental illness.
Yeah.
So definitely thank everyone for taking out to come in and work with us today or listen to the presentation. And students, thank you for taking an extra day to listen to the presentation. And we'll be working in the future to bring Eastside NAMI on a smaller scale to each school to see if they're interested in have an individual conversation with your school community. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your